Good evening, everyone. Over the years, Misano has been well known for various exploits on two wheels, but over the course of the last 25, there has been an uptake in the level of four-wheeled racing. But what you might not be aware of, before Misano became the World Circuit Marco Simoncelli, before it became any of that, it was actually farmland that to this day still affects the racing. You might be surprised by the conditions here today with it being slightly wet. However, the way that the track has been built and developed means that this circuit handles rain and drains really well compared to older circuits that are of even circuits of a similar age, which is quite fascinating really to know about. The other element of it is that it is deliberately aggressive with its curbs. We can see as Mark Chapman goes around a few of these corners how severe the bumps are on this track. But tonight, in the spirit of Nuevo Testamento, the drivers are going to rewrite the chapter, because there could be a new championship leader for round 9 here of the Season 12 GT3 Challenge Series here with ACC Race Nation. I'm Jack Millington, your commentator as always for this wonderful championship, and I'm excited to see what is going to go down in these difficult, wet conditions. It's not an easy circuit at the best of time for most drivers, and now they've got a little bit of weather to deal with too, but that will bring out the best of the drivers' reflexes and abilities to get hold of the race circuit. We're going to go through the drivers and see how they're getting on. Mark Chapman has taken up quite a lot of screen time as Liam Watkinson returns from off the circuit there. I think it looks like he's gone off near the hairpin on the back part of the circuit, it looks like, for the number 70, but he's on now. He's gotten out of everybody's way and he'll be heading towards the pits, I'm sure, with whatever's gone on. But let's have a look through the drivers who are here this evening and the lap times we've got in so far. So it's Stuart Packham at the moment leading the way on provisional pole with a time under the 1 minute 40s. That's a good effort from the Hurricane man. Following on from Packham, you've got Jeffrey Van Buren in the Ferrari, a good car to be circulating around Misano with. The home fans will be delighted with that, of course. For those that don't know, not only do Ducati use this circuit extensively for testing, but of course Ferrari do as well. So the home fans will be cheering on for the Dutchman to try and take a race win this evening. Danny Zoutenbayer continuing his uptick of form, following on from that podium last week at the Red Bull Ring. He's in third place at the minute I was going to say he was in third place, but Simon Whiting returning for the first time in a few races. Really nice to see Simon, first time we've seen him since round 6, and he is currently on the second row of the grid. He's just got in front of Danny Zoutenbayer. Then it's Dennis Penders, who's just moved up to 5th place. Let's see how Dennis can get on. He's in the right car for this evening, and the conditions suit the Ferrari with its MR traction layout, as Steve Hall puts himself into the top 3. That's more like it from the Season 8 champion. He's been playing about with some firmware settings, and Thrustmaster have sent him some updates. Let's hope they can all come together for him this evening. Chappers is in 7th. He's just coming towards the start-finish line. He was in 7th. Dan Hatton, the man who's been on excellent form this season, has just pipped him to 7th in the Mustang. Don't forget, this Mustang driver, he's been absolutely phenomenal so far in this championship for Season 12. But of all the tracks to be carrying ballast at, this isn't the one you want to be doing it, and he will be carrying 20 kilos. So we'll see how Hatton gets on with that as we go round the circuit. Danny Felix is in the top 10. Well, at the moment, he was in 9th place. He's just dropped down to 10th because ACC's Race Nation's latest race winner, Jordan Harding, after winning last week at the Red Bull Ring, he is in 7th position in the Honda NSX. Jordan, of course, will be carrying the full 30 kilos of ballast as he runs a little bit deep, and actually is going to return to the pits with the car as Van Buren's gone a little bit quicker on his most recent lap. Matt Phillips, fresh from a really good drive last week. He's in 11th place for qualifying. The McLaren will be quite handy around here, I feel, for the 5 drivers who are in the McLaren this evening. Joe Warner's the last driver to have set a lap time, but we can only see his pit crew. He's in 12th place in the Mercedes, the only Mercedes in the field. We've got Jacob Byford-Rue in 14th place because Bence Biro has just gone into 12th on the times. The Hungarian, fresh from a really good drive last week. And it's Byford-Rue. It's Davy Zoutenbayer, who is running, looks to me like a slightly updated livery actually on that. He's got a, kind of like his brother, he's got a Dayglow yellow Nissan this time, which is quite nice to see. So he's out there representing that bright yellow sunshine. It's Mark Laszlo in 16th, Ross Harris in 17th. Mikey Keating is in 18th place. Looks like Mikey's got a slightly altered colour scheme. I know that he likes to run a few different variants, because that's kind of his thing, really. He's got a bit off the road, though. Liam Watkinson is 19th, and then the driver known as G isn't actually G. This is a debutant. This is Gas Monkey. I'm assuming that's not his birth name. If it was, I would assume his parents had given birth to him in a petrol station just near a zoo, but who knows. Gas Monkey, though, is in 20th place in the 83, not yet set a time. He's getting out of everyone's way, so new to the championship. Let's see how the Irish boy gets on. I'm assuming it's a boy, who knows, it could be a girl. But Packham still leading the way at the minute. Those are the 20 drivers in for this evening. We've got 9 minutes and 20 seconds remaining on the clock, so let's get out there and get on board with one of the drivers. It's going to be hopefully someone we can fight. Steve Hall almost in the right place, but he's just about going into the braking zone for turn 1. Just trying to see. It would have been great to have got to Byford-Rue, but that's not going to happen. Gas Monkey's had a spin. See if we can find... Where's Dan Hatton? Looks like he's going to be coming onto a flying lap. If our race director can get there fast enough, it'd be perfectly ideal. There we go. So on board with the Mustang then towards the first corner, which is a chicane. It's a difficult right into left hand complex, and you can see in the weather conditions the car just sliding a little bit in the braking zone. You can see Mark Chapman just coming out of the pits there, so you feed out having missed the first chicane. Out of turn 3 and then into turn 4 at Rio, into the right hander, down into first gear for the Mustang, still in first gear for the second part of that at turn 5, and the car wanting to fishtail on the exit of there. Turn 6 again. You've got to be careful with the curbs around here. As I mentioned earlier, as I alluded to, these curbs will bite back, so no excessive use of those, otherwise you will end up firing into the barriers. Into the heavy braking zone at turn 8, probably the heaviest braking zone on the whole track, but we'll see how drivers get on when they come to turn 14 later. A quick flick of the right into turn 9, but then turn 10 a long progressive right-hander. First gear again for Hatton in 3rd place at the moment in the driver's standings. You've got plenty of time to think about how you want to approach Cavono, which is turn 11. It's technically a double right-hander, but you flick through on the inside, and then you'll flick through for turns 12 and 13. Flat at the first part, but then you've got to go down the gears, and Hatton's sliding off the road. He's just about gathered it together, but unfortunately that is the end of that lap. So hopefully, if I'm quick enough, we can get to Jeffrey Van Buren to carry on the rest of the lap. So into the right-hander at 12 and then 13, and then it's the next braking zone for Caro at 14. Difficult right-hander to get lined up, really, because you've got to switch the car over to the right-hand side for 15, and unfortunately Van Buren has understeered a bit wide there. Misano is quite literally the final corner here at this track at turn 16, where a couple of seasons ago Danny Felix and Jacob Byford had a cracking sprint to the line for 10th place, with Byford getting the 10th position that day, but Van Buren does not improve, and that is a lap of Misano. challenging track to have to navigate around, as you can all agree, ladies and gentlemen, who are watching via the Twitch stream at the moment. It is going to be... I'm expecting there to be a few mistakes this evening. The last few races, nice dry conditions, been smooth sailing. This is going to throw up a spanner in the works, and the drivers are going to have to be even more attentive than they typically are. But Mark Phillips just coming towards the line, of Canadian into 11th place at the present moment. So 41.5, and he fastest lap, a personal best for Phillips. So let's just have a look at how close that puts him to the pack. It's actually put him less than 2 seconds away from Stuart Packham. That's a really strong effort. So Mark Phillips just slowly but surely bringing himself up through the fit. It's called him Mark then. Apologies, Matt. I know what your name is. For some reason, I just randomly called you Mark for a moment. I think it's because you're 2 places away from Mark Chapman, who, to be fair, is only 400ths of a second, just under 400ths of a second clear of Matt Phillips. So maybe I've just blended the 2 names together there in a moment. But out of the final corner comes the number 19 of Simon Whiting. See how he gets on across the line. He stays in the 1 minute 40s. Only Packham has got into the 39s, which seems rather ominous. And the former champ is looking to try and make himself a 3-time champione of ACC Race Nation. We'll see if Packham can do just that. There is still plenty of time in this qualifying session to go, though, for that all to change. Dennis Penders, 6th in the Drivers' Championship, 6th in qualifying at the moment as well, having another solid season, running very wide out of the final corner. We'll have to see if that lap time was invalidated or not, but he is coming towards the line. It isn't an improvement from him. What about Hatton? Can he get under a second? It's going to be a tall ask tonight. Ross Harris has quietly moved up to 12th place, but everybody else at the minute doesn't seem to be improving, and I'm just wondering if the weather conditions are getting slightly more challenging now. Maybe there is more rain on the surface of the racetrack, and we might not see any further improvements apart from those that haven't yet set a time. Steve Hall to the line in 5th place, and Chappers just behind him there in 9th. Well, Aston Martin seems to be struggling a little bit at the moment. I'm not quite sure if that's just the nature of Misano and whether the AMR V8 is struggling with the wet conditions as well. But I know that Chappers is a good race driver in the wet, so maybe it's a quirk of this circuit. We'll have to analyse that as we go through. Liam Watkinson coming towards the line. Can he get a lap time on the board that's representative? Not yet is the answer to that question. Haven't yet seen a lap time from Gas Monkey in the M4. The only M4 in the field, actually, for that matter. So the number 83 representing the buy-in group there. What about Keating? Can he get... I know Mikey can go quicker than that, but he's still not quite found that lap time. He is in front of Mark Laszlo, though, who, you know, after last week where he had a wonderful cameo before, unfortunately, his steering wheel effectively decided to explode on him. It didn't actually technically explode, but something internally seemed to go wrong. He is in front of the McLaren, so a bit of a wild variation in form as Dan Hatton gets under the second barrier. But that seems to be quite a big split between the top 8 and then 8th to 9th, where the next group is from Chapman to Harris. And then there's the next group of Byford, Roux, Biro, Warner, Keating and Laszlo. Davies out and Bayer, we know, can go quick. We've seen that before. So he's probably somewhere between that 8th place and 9th place group. We don't know yet what Liam Watkinson can do. After his best drive ever last week at the Red Bull Ring, where he was comfortably in front of the back marker group. And that's not I'll make that perfectly clear. That's not a criticism of the back marker group, but he was comfortably clear. He'd actually latched onto the midfield last week at RBR. So can Liam continue that form on? It'd be wonderful to see. And Jamie Lee's got in with less than 2 minutes to go in qualifying. So it's good to see Mr. Lee back in the session. That's really, really pleasing. He popped up at the last minute last week in the Red Bull Ring. He had a good race in the end. I think he was 12th in that one. But he's managed to get in. He won't get a lap time on the board. It's too late for him now. But it's still Packham at the front. And Jordan Harding right up there in the Honda. I am sad to say this. I haven't said this yet on stream. But this will be, unfortunately, Jordan's last race of the season. Rather selfishly, Jordan from next week onwards will be committing himself to getting fit. Now, I can't talk. I ran 10 miles this morning. I'm trying to do a half marathon. I can appreciate how tricky it can be to start off running, but it's really nice to see Jordan doing something active. But as a result, we're going to lose him from the rest of the season. So can Harding go out on a bang? Let's hope he can. Good evening, John. Hope you're doing all right, bud. I agree with you. John saying in the comments there, it should be a really good race this evening. Tricky conditions, absolutely. I really do think we're going to see a few dramas through the course of the race, but we've got less than 30 seconds to go in qualifying. So drivers either on their final laps now or pushing on to their... Well, they're currently on their penultimate lap, some of them. It's going to be close for Harding. He's only got 2 corners to go. He might get another lap in here. Dennis Penders is done, though, so he's the first of the drivers we know won't be going any faster. Looks like Harding's going to just make it there. He's going to be behind Danny Zoutenbayer, so that'll be a bit of a distraction in front of him as Zoutenbayer goes across the line. What about Steve Hall? Will he make it across the line? That's tight. He's gone quicker, though, to be fair to him, and that gets him within half a second. And somebody else just got across the line as well. Was that Mark Chapman? It was. So Chapper's got through. So we now look to the rest of the drivers in the field. Byford Rue is going to be the first driver to see this checkered flag. And he does put himself into 13th place. So nice to see Jacob back after he missed the race last time out. Dan Hatton, championship contender, to the line. No improvement for him. But I don't think he'd be too disappointed with that. I think that's a very solid effort from the driver in third in the drivers' standings, which will inevitably become second, providing he finishes this evening. If he beats Stuart Packham, he'll be in the drivers' championship lead, but we'll talk about that more in a minute. Gas Monkey out of the final corner, the Irish driver to the line. Can he get a time on the board? He can, and it puts him in front of Mark Laszlo. So good effort that for Gas. I'm debating in my mind whether I'm going to call him Mr. Gas or Mr. Monkey. Something quite funny about saying Mr. Monkey I'd rather avoid, but who knows? We'll have to wait and find out. Liam Watkinson, he's been circulating. He hasn't set a valid lap. I'm worried about track limits for him this evening. To the line he comes with the red stripe on his Porsche, and that's a good effort for Liam to put himself 16th, but really highlights what a good job Joe did. Of course, my headset decided at that moment to disconnect. But that is qualifying, and Packham's lap time from earlier on is good enough for provisional pole. So the Lamborghini, the number 78, is on provisional pole with 139.780. Jeffrey Van Buren is second, just 3/10 behind in the 187 Ferrari. Row 2 is effectively a battle of the mid-engine cars with Whiting and Harding. Then it's the 2 Ferraris of Steve Hall and Danny Zoutenbayer on row 3. Dennis Penders and Dan Hatton are on row 4 with Mark Chapman, and Danny Felix with a very good lap time there to round out the top 10. The same lap time as Chappers. That's encouraging for the 985. Matt Phillips and Ross Harris are on row 6 with Jacob Byford Rue and Bence Biro on row number 7. Really strong effort that from Byford Rue. Row 8 is consisting of Joe Warner and Liam Watkinson with Mikey Keating and Gas Monkey on row 9. Mark Laszlo is on row number 10 with Davey Zoutenbayer. And as far as I know, that is the 20 drivers for this evening. Looking at what the comments are saying, Jacob saying, would be P12 but lost 3.5 tenths. I think he means to say half a second there at the final corner. Still happy with 13th. Yeah, good, really good effort to be fair, Byford. You know, genuinely is. 3 and a bit temps. I know what you mean now. Would have put you in front of Ross Harrison, right next to Mark Phillips, I keep calling him Mark. He's right next to Mark Chapman. Sorry, Matt. But yeah, that makes complete sense to me. Danny happy with P10, so you should be, Danny. That's a really strong effort, that. Right at the front of the midfield group. So let's hope you can consolidate that in the race. And then John giving some lovely advice to Jacob there, which is always nice to see, the ACC Race Nation director. Just helping out of a couple of tricks there, really, for everybody to have a look at. We are minutes away from the race start. We're just going to have a breather and we'll get into it in just a few moments' time.
Seconds.
30 seconds then until the drivers will set off for the formation lap here at Misano World Circuit. A great circuit, realistically. Ever since it had its track layout rechanged 20 years ago now, actually. It's been really great to see. It's been such a fun circuit to watch. Outside of motor racing in terms of four wheels, I'm a big fan of bikes, not more so than cars, obviously. But MotoGP races around here are very exciting. But the track's been open for over 50 years now, and since the 70s, I think it was opened in 1972, it has had a couple of changes. The name itself has changed over the years as well, to be frank. But this is going to be interesting today. 4.2 kilometres for the drivers to navigate, 16 corners. I do have a feeling that we're going to see some really quality racing amongst the drivers. Fastest lap around here was set by a driver that some people should know within the Discord area, Rafael Marciello in the Mercedes. This was 4 years ago now, and he did a 1:31.939. That is not going to happen, to be honest with you, and that's just not going to be the case. I will mention, though, that this is one of the few tracks actually in the world where the MotoGP bikes are faster than the GT3 cars. Not by much, but it's about a second really in dry conditions. I'm not sure what it would be like in the wet. I imagine it'd be quite varied depending on rider style, driving style, but hey ho. We are focusing, of course, on tonight's action. So let's just have a look at the drivers' standings whilst we're here. So let's go through that. Will Fielding leads the championship on 180 points, but he's not here this evening, which means that his two drop scores that he has will be set effectively. So now every race that he misses, he's going to tumble down the order. So Will Fielding won't lead the championship after tonight. Stuart Packham is second on 170 points, so 10 points back from Will Fielding. Then it's Dan Hatton in third on 169, 1 point separating those two. Mark Chapman is fourth on 154, with Jordan Harden fifth on 153. Dennis Penders is sixth on 140, with Bence Biro in seventh on 127. Hartle Toby is eighth on 124. We haven't seen the Audi driver for two races, including tonight's action. Rover Rakatamanga is ninth, sadly not here this evening. We were robbed of a good result for him from last week's racing as well at the Red Bull Ring. He was doing a good job, and then sadly disconnected from that one, and he's not here again this evening, sadly. And then Jeffrey Van Buren has managed to squeak himself into the top 10. He's tied on points, though, with Davy Zoutenbayer on 1-2-1. To make a mention as well, Simon Whiting there in third place. He's 13th in the driver's standings on 113. So Simon's got a chance of getting back into the top 10 tonight, especially if he finishes third. But we are coming towards the final corner of the race circuit. We're following the front two. Jeffrey Van Buren on the left-hand side of your screen at the moment. Packham will lead them as the red lights change over to green. We're coming up for an hour of racing, and the race is live here at Misano. We get on board with Van Buren, and it's a cracking start for Packham. He did exactly what he needed to do. Defending into turn one, they go. Packham runs wide at the first corner, but he's got the racing line through there, so he should be okay. Dennis Pender's having a bit of a fight with Steve Hall and Danny Zoutenbayer, who are side by side. There's a yellow flag, that's Liam Watkinson. Oh, Zoutenbayer and Hall getting into one another there as they approach the first heavy braking zone, and Simon Whiting's gone round, and there's a big pile up. Jordan Harding's involved, Jeffrey Van Buren's involved. That is a shame. Simon Whiting's actually got away with it despite being turned round. And unfortunately, I think it's Van Buren who might have kicked all that off. I'm not sure. It looked like a bottleneck at the start there, sadly. But unfortunately, it has resulted in the Dutchman falling all the way down the field. Penders had a few bumps in the middle of all of that, but has managed to escape serious damage. Harding's got a bit of damage on the front end of that car, and that's Joe Warner round at the hairpin at turn, I think that's going to be turn number 10 by the looks of it. So that's unfortunate for Joe after having a good qualifying session. But as a result of that, Whiting is fighting with Steve Hall there going into the fast right-handers. But Stuart Packham's got a 3-second lead, and he'll have been laughing in his helmet at that one. He'll be chuffed to pieces that he's got this margin. But Steve Hall, the big beneficiary of all of that, up to third place. Looks like he's got a bit of damage and a couple of bits of bumps, but I don't think it'll be too significant. Danny Zoutenbayer's up to fourth, and Dan Hatton's had the dream start he would have wanted. He avoided the carnage, and qualifying a little bit lower has helped him out. He's fifth, Pender's sixth, then it's Harding, then it's Chappers, it's Ross Harris, and Jacob Byford who's in the top 10. That's a picture. Take one of those. Matt Phillips is running in 11th, then it's Bence Biro under pressure from Danny Felix in 13th. Mark Laszlo is in 14th. I want to make a point about him in a minute as Jamie Lee dives for the inside. And Mark Laszlo's car decides to do a hop, skip and a jump through the corner. Davy Zoutenbayer's moved into 16th. Mikey's there. Then it's Liam Watkinson. Van Buren all the way down in 19th place. What a disaster for him. And then it's Gas Monkey and Joe Warner recovering from that spin. Let's get some onboards for the action in front of us. Let's try and get one that's an external one, like a roof. That'll do. That'll be perfect for us. We can flick through the drivers then. Oh, that's very deep from Penders, and Jordan Harding will just take full advantage of that if he gets the traction off the corner. He just about does. Can he get in front before they get to Tremonto? And the question is answered positively. Harding leaves the door open, but Penders doesn't have the traction. He does not, of course, have any weight on the car, though. Now, Harding will be under a little bit of pressure here coming into Cavone, but I think Harding will just move slightly to the middle of the road. Yeah, there you go, and he blocks that avenue off, so no chance of a move for Penders. Chapman then leads the next set of drivers with Matt Phillips there in 9th. Oh, Phillips has gone very late on the brakes. Just about manages to not run into the back of last season's champion. Ross Harris in 10th place. Byford Rue's been overtaken by Ross then as that's gone down. And we'll have a little look at that race start in a moment. That's a better camera angle. Let's have a look at that one. But Packham 2.4 in front at the minute, but Simon Whiting, since he got in front of Steve Hall, has hauled that gap down. It's been a while since we saw Simon Whiting take a race win in the championship, but he's not someone who is incapable of doing it. He certainly can. He's just had a bit of misfortune at times. We'll see how he gets on today. But that gap in flux at the minute, 2.3 seconds as they went over the first sector time beam effectively. Then it's Hull, it's Zoutenbayer in 4th place, who will be looking at Steve Hall and thinking, well, I've got a chance at getting up to him. Steve Hall as well, another driver we haven't seen on the podium for a while. We've got some quality drivers at the front of the field who just haven't had the results that they deserve. And then Dan Hatton in 5th place, who will be very pleased with his opening lap. Qualified in 8th place, of course. And a couple of drivers just moving over to just wet the tyres a little bit more, just seeking out a little bit of extra surface water to cool those tyres down. And that's quite damning early on in this race, 55 minutes to go. The drivers are already seeking the wetter parts of the road. Maybe the wet tyres just in that crossover phase where it's raining enough to be on the right tyre, to be on the wet tyre, but it's not really producing much in the way of grip and performance, and it's wearing a little bit. In an ideal world, you'd have technically an intermediate on this category of car, but that doesn't exist, so drivers will have to navigate that. Chapman is still in 8th place, but he has fallen away from this group, and he does have Mr. Phillips right behind him in 9th. You know, Matt looking to try and score and build upon that great result he had last week. See if he can do just that. And Ross Harris has actually just lost a little bit of contact with those two. So I think Matt Phillips is really benefiting from driving behind one of the experienced racers here, and it's just giving him something to follow and pursue for a bit. And I think he'll learn quite a lot from Mark if he can just stick with him for at least a couple of laps. He's doing a good job at the minute. Harris seeking out that wetter part of the road. Byford Rue is there in the Audi. Well, he was there in the Audi, but I thought there was a bit of contact, and Bence Biro has just nipped up the inside at turn number 8. So can Byford Rue fight back? He's right in the thick of things here at the minute, and he'll be quietly confident with how it's going so far. I don't think he'll be jumping for joy or anything like that, but that's not really what it's about. Down through the gears, you can see Biro looking to the inside of Harris. He's going to leave the car there, and to be fair to Harris, he gave him a lot of room. On board with Byford Rue for this, and Harris is on the inside at turn 15, so he should be able to secure that position. And ooh, Byford Rue tried, couldn't make it through, and now Biro is going to lunge down the inside at the final corner. And fair play to Ross, he gives him a lot of room and goes down a place, and I have a feeling that Byford Rue might get him here into turn 1, and in fact Harris just lets it go. So mature driving that from Harris. We've talked previously about how unlucky he has been at times, to be fair to him. I just think he doesn't want to get involved in any nonsense again. Now, back at the front of all the action that we've just been checking. Oh, and there's that. Oh, it is Matt Phillips, I think, off the road. It's not Matt Phillips off the road. My apologies. That was a McLaren going off the road, but I can't, for some reason, cannot find out. It was Danny Felix who went off the road, and that looks like Matt Phillips. Now, something has gone on here. Oh, that's going to be, yeah, that's a little bit of a mistake there from Bence Biro. I think he didn't realise that Matt was alongside him going into the corner. Matt, thankfully, just about managed to save it and got away with it. So that could have been a big accident, that, for Biro, and it, to be honest, it could be argued it would have been his fault. Now, back in the fight further up through the field, that's what I was trying to come back to. Oh, I think Gas Monkey's dropped it on the exit of turn 10. Penders is at the tail end of this fight, which is currently being spearheaded by Simon Whiting. But these guys have got themselves into a rhythm now. Penders, I think he's going to try and put the pressure on Jordan Howden, but I also feel that he is sensible enough not to try and do anything too stupid and try and keep up with the Honda driver. We'll have to wait and see what his tactics are. Ooh, a little bit of a snap coming out of the first chicane there. He managed to tidy it all up relatively easily. But that's not something you really want to see, to be honest with you. That's the last thing you want to see, is drivers spearing off the road. But Packham still leads at the minute. Ben Spiro is still in front of Matt Phillips, following on from the shenanigans that we had going into turn number 10, or turn 9, technically speaking. Dan Hatton's he's acquitting himself quite well. You know, I was a little bit worried for him during qualifying, but my fears have been completely exacerbated. I had a suspicion he might struggle to keep up with everybody, but that is just not the case. Now, I'm going to mention one thing here, right? And I'm going to come back to this fight in a minute. We are still going to be involved with the action, but Simon Whiting is keeping Stuart Packham within reach here. Now, the first ever race that I commentated on in ACC Race Nation was back in Season 8, the season finale at the Spa-Francorchamps circuit. And that was the first time that I ever saw Simon Whiting win a race here in the championship. That is also the last time that Whiting won a race here in this series. So it's been 3 full seasons plus half of what we've gone through so far. Now, admittedly, Simon hasn't done all of the races, to be fair, but he is capable of race wins. He's had multiple podiums between now and then. Oh, I think there's been an accident actually between Liam Watkinson. I think Mikey Keaton's involved as well, actually. I don't know if there was a spin going side by side. They've both seemingly had an accident sliding off the road, but it doesn't seem to be too bad. In fact, yeah, Liam Watkinson waits up for him, so I wonder if Liam has nipped the back of the Lamborghini. We'll have a look at that in a little moment. But let's not rule him out. He's right there at the minute. It's been quite a long time. John just saying there's a few issues on the PS5. Is that from your side, John, or is that from my side? Because I typically don't have a... Oh, as Dennis Penders goes very wide at turn 10. Is that Danny Zoutenbayer just gaining... Yeah, again, going back to the wetter part of the race circuit. Jordan Harding very close to the back of Dan Hatton there. But I'm going to go... I know there's a lot of action. I want to have a look at that race start. I want to go and have a look at what happened there. So we go to the start of the race. We'll find the 187 because Van Buren was unfortunately the driver who was massively impacted by what went on. That is absolutely not going to help us in the slightest. So what we'll do is we'll skip that and then we can go... Hopefully we can go back. So we're going to have a little bit of... Let's call it skipping. So we get a camera angle that's a bit more appropriate for what we need. So that will do. That's a nice camera angle. So we're going into turn 2 on the first lap. And Simon Whiting's on the inside of us as we go into turn 3, then turn 4. There's a brush, but nothing too major. Van Buren touches the back of Whiting and then, as a result, has to slow down, hits Jordan Harding, who then gets hit by everybody else. And to be fair to Van Buren, how he didn't get plastered by somebody, I don't know. But that was kind of a... Once he had that little incident with Simon Whiting, as a result, it ended up being the determining factor in his fate. So that was a shame. And then if we go back through the field, we can have a look at what's... Whoa, we didn't see that, actually. Let's just have a look at that. Oh, Gas Monkey absolutely T-boning Joe Warner. That's why Joe Warner was facing the wrong way. I don't think he'll be too impressed with that with Joe, so that might be a trip to the stewards for Mr. Gas. And then we've just had that incident with Mikey, I think. Let's just see if we can... Oh, Joe's actually gone into the pit, so... Let's just have a look. Mikey was facing the wrong way, unless he's just had a spin by himself. There's Mark Laszlo, who I'll talk about in a minute. Where is Mikey in all of this? Mr. Keating. There's Mr. Keating. So has he already been... He's already gone round at that point? So Mikey has a slide at that moment in the track. Oh, and then there was an incident. I think Mikey lost it all by himself. So runs wide and then... Wow. To be fair to Mikey, he's done a good job there because... He comes into the right-hander, has a slightly wrong line, and then as a result understeers off. And it's just, woo. To be fair, if Liam had moved off at that point and pulled away, Mikey would have avoided him so much, to be fair to Liam. I can understand why he stopped, but hey ho. Let's get back to the action. At the front, Jordan Harden still running in 7th place behind Dan Hatton as Byford Rue under pressure from the recovering Van Buren. Van Buren on the inside line coming towards turn 8. Byford Rue on the outside line. Oh, he got a couple of wheels on the curb. I'm not surprised he slid off the road there. I wonder if Harris will get by. Byford Rue had a good exit. Just enough momentum to defend from the McLaren into the right-hander. So, fortunately for Byford Rue, he's going to retain 12th. He loses 1 place. Davies Altenbayer just stalking them. I'm not sure how the Nissan's going to get on with these conditions. It's not a car that we've seen that often in the wet weather. So, we'll see how Davey can channel his inner special result. Packham still leads the way, but Simon Whiting with a stonking lap on the last lap. He's 1.7 behind Packham now. Is a 4-season wait going to be over for a victory? Who knows? I wonder if Packham had a little mistake on that lap. That's just what I'm thinking. He's been in the 140s. I think there's been an incident between... it's Ross Harris. I'm just trying to work out who the other car is that has gone off. In that context there. It's Byford Rue. I wonder if they've had a coming together. Oh, that's a shame, because Byford Rue was in a good battle there for the outer placings. Potentially a sneak into the top 10, but alas, that's not going to happen. Oh, and there's Simon Whiting gone off the road. I think he has. And the commentators... And he's hit the wall as well. The commentators curse. Well... It looks like he's nudged the wall. He's got a bit of damage on the front end, which puts Steve Hall into 2nd place. Goodness me. He must be living in a fever dream right now, Miss Steve. He must be thinking, how long's it been since he had a podium? Because it's, and I mean this in the nicest way possible to Steve, it's been some time for him. Again, another driver with... I've talked about so much this season about having some rotten luck and being unable to participate through basically the entirety of season 11. I think I'm just going to have to try and have a little think about when the last time we saw him on the podium was. But we'll have to see. So Simon Whiting, damage to that car, and I'm wondering if it's just a bit too significant for him to try and maintain speed with Steve Hall. Last time we saw Steve Hall running that high, I think we've got to go back to season 10 for the season 8 champion. You know, this has been a solid drive so far, and he's found himself in 2nd place thanks to a lot of other drivers' misfortune, but he's secured that place really well. So fingers crossed to see if he can stay in front. Whiting under pressure from Danny Zoutenmeyer, so we'll have to see if Simon can adapt to that damage and maybe try and just get away with doing the 1 pit stop and fixing it in that mandatory stop the drivers have to make. Then it's Hardin in 5th place. So Jordan's got past Dan Hatton whilst we've been looking at all the other action, and here comes Danny's out and by. Whiting's trying to push to the inside defensively and aggressively, but he is falling away from Hall at the minute. He is defending, don't get me wrong, that'll be part of where he's losing time, but the other elements for Simon as he goes off the road, as he comes into turn 14, is that damage is going to be handicapping him. And I wonder if he'll have to try and stick it out for a few laps, maybe try and do an undercut. Perhaps that is the strategy to take. But Dan Hatton, despite losing that place, he's in 6th at the minute. He could get 5th place back, just depending on what happens with Simon's car. And then Dennis Pender's just at the tail end of this group. Again, prime place for him to fire off an undercut if he wanted to. We'll see how that navigates itself out. Mark Chapman's in 8th place. Matt Phillips doing another sterling effort here in 9th. The Canadian is really starting to come on a little bit in the last few rounds, and 9th place at the minute comfortably so after having a little bit of a wobble off the track, but he's regathered himself up and he's back out there. So Phillips in 9th. He does have the recovering Van Buren coming for him. So we'll wait to see what the Dutchman does, whether he can catch up. Davies out and Byers in 11th. Jamie Lee up to 12th, following on from no qualifying. Then it's Bent Biro, who's been up and down the field a little bit this evening. Ross Harris is 14th, following on from the incident with Byford Rue. Whatever happened there, we'll have to have a look at. Then it's Mikey Keaton in 16th, who's gone very wide at the double right-hander. Joe Warner still circulating in 17th place, but I think Joe's had a couple of spins. I think that damage as well hasn't helped him. And then it's Felix, who's just made a pit stop, and then Liam Watkinson, who made a pit stop earlier on. And we're gonna have to cut on board, I think, with Danny Zoutenbayer, because this guy is putting the pressure on Simon. Let's see if we can. There we go. Oh, and Whiting's gone off the road. I wonder if he ran wide and just knew he couldn't get back on track. He's fighting hard with Jordan Harden, but Zoutenbayer goes through and into 3rd position. Oh, and yet Simon Whiting heading for the pit, so unfortunately couldn't carry that damage on, and that's a real shame for Simon. He still has a chance at the podium, which would be the first podium he's had in quite a few races, to be fair, which would be nice for him to have. I was secretly hoping he'd have a race-winning challenge tonight. I always like to see somebody who's not been on the top step hit the top. It's always nice to have. Gives you a good release for the community. It's always good to have a competitive championship, which it absolutely has been. But Hatton struggling in these conditions, struggling to get it stopped there going into Rio. And Harding's on the inside almost. We've got it's a double fight going on. And Hatton trying to close that gap off, but I don't think he can. Zoutenbayer in front of us defending from Harding. Will Penders go for it? Yes, he does. The Ferrari lunges it and goes flying off the road. And unfortunately for the Belgian, very optimistic that braking zone from him. And the 103 slips back to 6th position. But you've got to appreciate the effort. There you go. Simon White still in the pits there. But Jordan Harding now, looking like the driver to try and challenge for another podium. What would be his final race of season 12, which is such a great shame realistically, because it would have been fab to see how he'd tackle a full 15 races. But he's been showing us how quick he is in that NSX, and will he come back in season 13 and try and attempt to do it all again? Certainly capable of putting a championship challenge together. I know how Stuart Packham rates him highly, as does a lot of the community. It was a nice moniker to get that first victory off his back. Harding looking very strong, and a really nice line that through turn 1 to set up turn 2. He can just plant the car through turn 3, which he does relatively well. And Zoutenbayer just starting to shake the car a little bit, just snaking around a touch. Into the right-hander, then the next right-hander. And then into the left coming out of turn 6. And Harding just closing the gap down. Harding won't make a lunge here. He will stick in behind the 101 Ferrari as we start to approach the halfway distance mark now, where the drivers will be starting to have a little think about pit stops. It's a tight line from Zoutenbayer. Harding trying to take a wider line. They both kind of equalise themselves out there through that corner. It does seem that Tremonto at turn 10, you can take 2 or 3 different lines through that corner. It's all about preference and comfortability. You can tell I've done a 10-mile run today. I am falling over my words a little bit. Oh, that's a car off the road. I think that's Joe Warner actually. That's a yellow flag. And I know that Hatton was defending from Penders there, so that will have given him a bit of relief. Into Caro at turn 14. And then into the final 2 left-handers on the track. This one being the final one at turn 16, known as Misano corner. But Penders now looking very ominous. Steve Hull's doing a good job. He's got the gap to 4 seconds with Packham pretty much. Van Buren is steadily closing the gap down. But I tell you what, Matt Phillips has closed the gap up to Mark Chapman. This is a Tokyo Drift moment from Davey Zoutenbayer and a stonking drive from Matt Phillips. He's really driving brilliantly. I'm not going to say anything else. I've already commentators cursed Simon White and I don't want to do it to anybody else. But Penders, I feel like Dennis will go for a lunge if he's close enough, like he did before. He was a bit too far back then. Is that Harding on the inside of Danny Zoutenbayer? I think it is up front. Yeah, Harding's gone through at turn 8 at Quercia. And the Honda moves into the podium places. Now the next question becomes, does Harding have the race pace to go up and after Steve Hall? He can't make it 2 wins in a row, can he? What a way to finish season 12 for him that would be. Still a double podium in the last 2 races. He'd be chuffed a bit. But Penders is where we're watching the action. And Hatton, I think, is starting to feel really hamstrung with that heavy weight. But it felt like the amount of understeer that Penders had through the right-hander at turn 12 there. It felt like he actually had the heavy weight at the front of the car. Just seemed to understeer off the road. And we do have another pit stop for the number 7 there of Jacob Byford-Rue. So he is the next driver to make a pit stop. He's not making a second pit stop, just to clarify. But and a little bit deep into turn 1. And I think I was going to say, I think Penders was looking to the outside at 2. But if that's not really an overtaking spot, to be honest. I would have been surprised if he'd have gone through. But Hatton lives to fight another day. Runs deep at Rio. Is that Simon White having a half spin again? It is. And he's going to slide back on track. And that's delayed Hatton, who's having his own sliding moments coming out of the left-hander at turn 6. Hatton is lucky. I'm not sure if you can or not. There we go. I've just had the feedback come through. So I was actually talking the whole time, but it's seemingly the mic had, for whatever reason, had gone off. But nevertheless, what I was saying was that Packham has come out a couple of seconds behind Ross Harris, so he's got time to get those new tyres fired up to speed and to add insult to injury for Matt Phillips. Commentator's curse really is struck there doubly hard for the Canadian, as he's going to have a stop-go penalty. Jordan Harding in the pit, so Jordan's seeing the benefit of trying to do the undercut, and he's firing on out of there in quite quick time. And he will come out behind Ross Harris, and he'll come out behind Stuart Packham, but his fight is with Danny Zoutenbayer, who is currently at the penultimate corner. I think Jordan's going to be quite a long way clear of Danny Zoutenbayer. Now, as Jordan just trundles down the pit lane, there's Zoutenbayer now coming into the braking zone at turn 1. And Jordan is up to speed, so he is going to come out quite a bit clear of Zoutenbayer. So a good pit stop that from the Honda team. And now Harding will have the undercut on Steve Hall. So the top 4 still yet to make a pit stop, but that is Steve Hall, then it's Dennis Penders, then it's Davey Zoutenbayer doing his Davey Zoutenbayer thing by staying out longer than everybody. So it's nice to see him up there. And in that Dayglow yellow livery that he's running for the first time, which is really cool to see. It is tradition, John, you're right. If you can't see the Twitch chat, was that... I was just going to say, who is that who's just spun off in the background? Was that Jamie Lee? Yeah, there you go. The Jamie deciding to take the old Misano layout. But what I was saying was, if you can't see the chat, John saying that it's tradition for the mic to turn off. It does. There's no reason why it does it either. I cannot fathom why it does. So I have to try and, if I remember to, periodically turn it off so that it's not in a heavy part of the reaction. Now, of course, last week, if you were watching at the Red Bull Ring, the microphone turned off on the last lap. I only just about got it switched back on to celebrate Jordan Harding's first win. Imagine if it had gone off a little bit after that. It would have been tragic. But anyway, Davey Zoutenbayer is in the pit. So, surprisingly, commentator getting everything wrong this evening, to be honest with you. Davey in the pits in the number 18. Pender's still out there. Hall's still out there as well. I just want Steve Hall to do to have a good result. That's all we want. One race where he just doesn't have a pedal issue. That's all we want. That's all we want for Steve. Doesn't matter where he finishes, necessarily. I mean, he wants to finish high up as possible. I think he's coming in. Yes, there you go. Steve Hall comes into the pit. So a couple of laps after everyone else. He will have fresher tyres come the end of this race. But it will mean that Stuart Packham will, in theory, resume the race in the lead. But Penders has come in. Are we going to see Ross Harris leading a race? Because he is he's just in front of Packham at the minute. I don't think we've ever seen Ross Harris lead a lap before. Wouldn't that be lovely? Wouldn't that be a nice story to have? Ross Harris leading a race in the McLaren. I have to find out if he does. But after all that pit stop action that went on, so Jordan Harding is 8 seconds behind, and that's a drive-through penalty for Jamie Lee for speeding in the pit lane. So for Jamie Lee, after running quite well, has now immersed himself in the thralls of the steward's room, and he'll have to do another visit through the pit lane. But Steve Hall is now out on circuit, well, out of his pit box and now circulating. So is Dennis Penders, and Stuart Packham has got in front of Ross Harris, which is a great shame because it would have been Ross Harris officially leading a lap. But Ross moves into second place as a result. But Packham had to get on with that because he lost nearly 2 seconds to Jordan whilst that pit stop went on. And the other thing to make a point is that Jordan Harding is comfortably clear of Steve Hall. And the other matter is Danny Zoutenbayer is comfortably clear of Steve Hall. So that has not worked out at all for the number 5. That couple of laps later, leaving it for the pit stop, has really cost the Season 8 champ. And I think he's going to be in 4th place. And off the podium as it stands. So can Steve fight back? That's the new question we have to ask ourselves. Can he fight up to the back of Danny Zoutenbayer? They're in the same machinery. Can he pull it off? Looking down through the rest of the field, the gaps are slightly out at the moment, as Matt Phillips serves his stop and go. Simon Whiting is on a mission. He's obviously, he fixed his damage before, but since that damage happened, he's been sort of out of the contest really. But he has got the fastest lap of the race, so Simon just demonstrating what speed was available to him in that McLaren. He just had, sadly, that moment where he went off the road, and that kind of ruined the rest of his race. Van Buren down in 13th place as well, so Van Buren's had some dramas out there. Ross Harris goes into the pits. What could have been for a pit stop for him. And Stuart Packham is only 5 seconds clear of Jordan Harding. It's a bit like Takamoto Katsuta at the weekend. You wait for one race victory and two come along in a row after so long. This is potentially possible for Jordan. It's 5.1 at the minute. I'm not saying he's going to win the race, but I'm just saying it would be amazing if it was. 5.2 at the moment. So I'm wondering whether Packham got a little bit delayed by Watkinson there. I'm just wondering if that might have been the case. Only one retirement from the race so far, just to remind you, it was Gas Monkey, unfortunately, who retired from Misano. And I also just want a brief mention to say thank you to Howard Dunn for also commenting about the headset issue that I'm having. Probably will need to get a new one, to be fair. 1 lap left for Jamie Lee to serve his drive-through penalty. He'll need to serve that, otherwise he'll be disqualified from the race. And we'll have 2 retirements for that matter. But Packham's still leading. Then it's Jordan Harding. Then it's Danny Zoutenbayer on for back-to-back podiums. Steve Hall's in 4th. To wait and see if Steve can mount a charge up to the back of the 101. And it's Dan Hatton who, I think if you offered him 5th place, he'd snap your hand off it, even though he's less than 3 seconds behind Steve Hall. I think he's in a bit of a fight today with the car. That was Liam Watkinson who'd just gone off the track there. Not sure what's gone on to Liam Watkins actually. Let me just have a little look. He's parked at the side of the road. I wonder if something has gone on with that car. He's running quite solidly for the time. It doesn't seem to be the case now. Oh, there we go. He's back up and running. There we go. Just as I say it. Everything's conspiring against me. Now, this is a repeat from a few seasons ago. Danny Felix and Jacob Byford-Rue, back in season, I'm going to say it was season 10, were fighting here at Misano, different machinery for the pair of them at the time, but they were fighting for 10th place. They were both trying to outfox one another for the last spot in the top 10, as Byford-Rue goes sliding through the final corner, and Jamie Lee's been disqualified for speeding in the pit lane. Oh no! That's the worst possible way of being disqualified, as Danny Felix tries to go around the outside at turn 1. What I was about to say, though, it does look like the rain's got a little bit heavier in the last few minutes. I could be mistaken here, but it definitely looks like it's heavier than what it was before. And that'll throw the cat amongst the pigeons for a number of drivers. Byford-Rue runs very deep at turn 5 and turn 6. But going back to my plot line from earlier, back in season 10, these two fight and fight and fight and fought for 10th place. And at the final corner on the drag race line, Byford-Rue beat Felix to 10th place. At the minute, it's looking like Felix is very strong at this point in the race. However, we could have Ross Harris and Jeffrey Van Buren join them. We don't yet know. Byford-Rue, oh, he's sliding off the road. Felix followed him almost, and Danny Felix moves into the top 10 with a sumptuous move at Tremonto. And that's a good overtake for Felix. Now, his thing will be to try and maintain 10th place. I won't lie, I am stirring up a narrative that probably these two have forgotten. We're having all sorts of things are going on with Twitch at the moment. So I've noticed a couple of people commenting saying there's chat problems and all sorts of things. I don't necessarily think it's anything to do with my settings. I just think it's a Twitch issue. Oh my god. Byford Rue hanging it loose out of the penultimate corner, and Danny Felix. Yeah, it's definitely getting heavier. The rain. The drivers are just extending their braking zones a little bit more. 43.8 from Felix, 44.1 from Harris, a 41 flat from Van Buren. So Van Buren now got the bit between his teeth and might try and stop all of these three trying to get a top 10 position. Joe Warner, we haven't talked much about him as Mikey Keaton goes off the road again at that same corner. He's not having a good time. But Joe Warner running and circulating in 18th place. Jordan Harding half a second faster than Stuart Packham on that lap. The gap less than 5 seconds. That's all I'm going to say on that matter. And Chapper's now in a lonely 9th place. Although, I say a lonely lap place, he has had Matt Phillips with him for most of the race. The only difference now is that he's a lap down in the 73. Which has still been a sterling effort from Matt. It's just a shame that he had that contact and then had the drive-through, which has kind of ruined his point score for the evening. But it's been a good race and some really strong speed shown from him, and it'll be exciting to see how he gets on for the next race, which of course is the second 2-hour race of the season at Silverstone, which will be a great place to go racing. I'm really excited to be going back to Silverstone. It's been quite a while actually since I commentated on a race around there, so I'm very excited to be going back to Silverstone for the 10th race of the season, and after that we'll have a week's break and then we'll go into the final 5 races of the championship, where the season really starts to hot up in terms of the potential drivers' champion. It's not quite championship defining right now, but you start to lose the opportunities after next week. Once you get to round 11, round 12, that's where you have to be in position really to make a championship challenge. And you're looking at drivers such as Stuart Packham, Dan Hatton, Mark Chapman. You're looking at those 3 potentially. You know, let's not rule out Dennis Penders, because he's not far away either at the minute. He's had another quality season. He's having a quality drive at the moment. He's in 6th place. He's just keeping himself there. But again, we'll have to wait and see. Steve Hall has closed the gap down. Whilst we've been talking regarding Danny Zoutenbayer, he is now just about 2 seconds away from his fellow Ferrari stablemate. 2 seasons it's been since we saw Steve Hall on the podium. Can he do it tonight? And Dennis Penders is reeling Dan Hatton in. So sometimes this happens in the GT3 Challenge series. What we have is a little bit of a quieter, less frenetic spell during parts of the race, and then it all starts to come together at the end. Jordan Harding now less than 4 seconds behind Stuart Packham. Again, I'm saying no more on that. But Danny Zoutenbayer will see Hall coming. And if the rain has intensified, like I think it has, it certainly looks like it has, Steve Hall will have the better tyres to cope with the conditions. Yes, he lost track position and a lot of time to the drivers around him, but he is reeling him in. Oh, and Zoutenbayer runs a little bit wide at turn 13, and that's just going to dangle the carrot for Hall to try and close the gap down. I'm just going to look at the lap times as they come across the line. So Stuart Packham a 1:41 flat. Jordan Harding a 40.5, another half a second taken from the race leader. Danny Zoutenbayer a 41.3, and Steve Hall a 40.7. 0.6 practically taken out of the Dayglow Yellow Ferrari. And that gap is 1.2 seconds. And Dennis Penders took a second out of Dan Hatton on that lap. So these gaps are starting to converge a little bit with less than 13 minutes remaining, and that's wide from Zoutenbayer. But he does get a nice tight entry into the next right-hander at 5. So Not too bad from the 101. Jeffrey Van Buren has now joined the fight for the top 10. Let's follow this action just for a little bit. I'll keep an eye on the fight for the respective 3rd, 1st and 5th places. I'll keep an eye on the track map. Here goes. Wow! What a lunge! And Jacob Byford-Rue does a drift in response. That he came from as far back as Milan. How far did Jeffrey Van Buren come back from then? That was an unbelievably brave move into turn 12. My goodness me. Overtake of the evening from the Ferrari driver. Went full send into the right-hander. That's one of the best moves I've seen in quite a few races, to be fair. Take a bow, Van Buren. We had, of course, earlier on we had Penders going around the outside of Hatton, which was a beautiful move, but that was brave. This is a brave move for 11th place. Well done. Pushed me up an octave, and Danny Felix running wide at Rio. And he's running wide again on the exit of 5 and 6. And Danny's at a tighter line from Van Buren. He's going to have the inside line for turn 8 at Correa. It's actually Correa. But the 187, he should be able to brake just a touch later. And that is move signed, sealed and delivered for 10th position. And you feel that for Van Buren, that's probably, unless there's mechanical maladies in front of us, that's going to be it for him, really. He's just got to make sure he secures 10th place, which is not the result he wanted. But I think he's done a good drive back through the field here. Encountered some difficulties for sure, but for Van Buren, I think 10th place is a solid recovery drive. I think he can be relatively pleased with that. Now Felix and Byford-Rue and Harris can go at it again, so we'll see how that fight transpires. Pender's now 1.5, 1.2 away from Dan Hatton, and Steve Hall is about a second away. Bence Biro, he's had a remarkable race. I think he was 16th at one point, and he's up to 7th. Just out of nowhere has really just appeared. The number 96 is just having a really quietly effective season. So 10 minutes to go. Keep it on the circuit. Hope he can. Danny Felix there in 11th place. Ross Harris in that group for that fight. Look at that gap. Look at that gap. 7 tenths faster on the last lap. He can't do it again, surely. Let's go away. Let's go away from that. For now. Just for now. As we enter these final 10 minutes, there are starting to have a little bit of fights all over the place, and I think Byford-Rue's now fighting his own car at this point. I've seen him sideways more times than I think is humanly possible. Those tyres he's running, they look like they're struggling. I'm wondering whether Byford-Rue changed his tyres. He's sliding a lot more. I know that the other Audi R8 driver this season, Hartle Toby, his R8 typically slides about a lot, but this is an excessive amount in these conditions. I'm wondering if he changed tyres. He might have done. Maybe it's the pressures that are throwing the car out a little bit. Maybe the settings aren't quite right, but he's under immense pressure now following that mistake. It's a Ross behind. Down to 2 tenths as we come into the flick right-hander, then into the corner at 12 and 13 and then 14. And Ross Harris, that's a really tight line from there. Jordan Harding has made a mistake, ladies and gentlemen. That gap has gone back out to 3.5 seconds. That might just be the mistake that Packham needed to bring this car home. In fact, that looks like that gap's gone further out. That's 4 seconds. Now, I just want to have a look and see whether Harding has had a mistake out there. Obviously, the race director goes this way around. Is that damage on the front? Is that still the same from before? 42.9. He lost about a second on that lap. Second and a bit. Okay. So maybe he's had a little slide somewhere, but that might just have tempered any expectation for a second race win in a row. But what is happening further back, and I know that these two are together on the timing tower, is Danny Zoutenbayer and Steve Hall. Less than a second, and Zoutenbayer Nice line that from the pair of them, but Steve Hall got that tighter than what I was expecting. Half a second between the two. Danny Zoutenbayer wants a second podium in a row, a second, third position. Steve Hall wants a podium for the first time in 2 seasons. Very different types of motive between the two. And I think I know which... Whoa, is he going to try? He's very late into the corner. But I think Steve's setup and his tyre life is so strong now. And Zoutenbayer is really trying to look for the extremities of the water here. He's pushing to the inside line. He's going to put himself on the wrong line for the right-hander. He'll have to check up a little bit through turn 12 and 13. If he's not careful... Oh, he's sliding, he's gone off the road. And that's the chance that Hall needs to go through at turn 14. A bump between the two. And Zoutenbayer has to concede that place. And Steve Hall is back in the top 3. Zoutenbayer's very close though. Is he going to lunge at turn 16? He doesn't. He chooses better of it. But that's the first of the transpiring moves we expected to happen. Hall goes through. And now it's over to Dan Hatton and Dennis Penders. Because look at these two now with 6 minutes to go. Harding looks like he's fallen away from Packham. It's going to be a beautiful drive from Stuart Packham. We haven't talked much about him. But he's just led comfortably from start to finish. But the Ford just starting to wobble about a little bit. As is Penders, because he's eager to get on the throttle and pass this Mustang. Nice tight line that. Is he opened the door at 5? Not quite. He's really trying to find a way through. He's got a nice line through turn 6. He's 2 tenths away. But the Mustang just going to have enough poke in a straight line to keep himself in front of Penders. I'm going to come back into the timing tower area just to have a look at Ross Harris is still behind Jacob Byford-Root. I say still behind. They've swapped places again, actually. So... those two are having a really good scrap over 12th place. Everyone else is a little bit more separated out. Penders couldn't be separated more than a piece of paper from the rear spoiler of Dan Hatton at the minute. That rain is intensified though. Into the right-hander again, into the flick, then into turn 13. Hatton really getting the car slowed down. Will Penders look for a late lunge? No, he doesn't. Harding's got the gap down again to under 3 seconds. I don't know if Packham's made a mistake. You can see though that Hatton is really just trying to tame that Mustang through the left. It's just leaning on that extra weight that it's carrying. And Penders, if the straight was long enough, he'd probably lunge into turn 1. He'd probably try and outbrake the Ford, but he just can't. Straight's not quite long enough, this one. Into the left-hander. Nice line that from Penders. Can he get it dialed into turn 3? This is the critical area. He's going to look to the outside. He's not afraid of using the outside line as Penders. To the outside at 4. This would be brilliant if he could pull this off. We've still got Hatton on the inside, but he just defends well, does Hatton. Oh, Penders just about gathered it all together. That was a big moment. The yellow flag out there. Looks like it's Simon Whiting who's had a spin. Jeffrey Van Buren set the fastest lap of the race, so Van Buren is motoring along. Again, it's a big question of what could have been for him, really, because he was doing a great job. But this is the closest action on circuit. Steve Hall now has started to stretch his legs to Danny Zoutenbayer. That gap is looking comfortable and looking really good. Davey Zoutenbayer is not far from Bence Biro, actually. Bence has been doing a solid job in 7th, but the Nissan has slowly pulled his way through the field. Chapman's ran into a solid 9th place, but the speed seemingly elusive to him this evening. But we still follow with this battle for 5th position as we go into the final 2 and a bit minutes of this race. We might have time for another lap after this one, I think. I didn't quite check when Packham went over the line, but because Harding's close to him, he won't be able to just slow right down. That's a tighter line, that, from Penders. He's going to look to the outside line. He's going to try something that we don't normally see, and he's kept the car on the inside for turn 3. Hatton gave him just enough space into turn 4 at Rio. Hatton's trying to turn in, but he can't quite get there, and now they're going to be side by side through 5 and 6. The Mustang is going to be on the wrong line, I feel, for turn 6, and Penders sweeps around the outside, and can he get across to cover the inside line for turn number 8? No. Hatton is still there on the left hand side of your screen, and he's going to brake a little bit later. Into turn 8 they go. Penders leaves the room. He's trying to do the undercut, and the switchback is on. But he's going to be on the outside for turn 9. Can he repeat what he did earlier on in the race and go right the way around the outside of the Mustang? He did it before, but he's not quite there. But he's going to try the switchback again. Beautiful racing between these two. This has been a really beautiful imagination of racecraft between these two drivers. They are properly going at it hammer and tongue. Stuart Packham is going to go on to the final lap of the race, and he's going to have fended off the advances from Jordan Harden, it looks like. But Penders is desperate to find a way through. Dennis, of course, he's had a top 5 this season at the 2-hour race that we did back at round 5. He wants to get one tonight as well. He's just been driving solidly all the way through the season as Dennis, but he wants another top 5 place, and Hatton goes defensive at turn 1. That's a bit too wide, I think, from Penders, and that's going to cost him for 2 and 3. He's definitely stronger at that point in the race circuit, but Hatton defends again. This is where Penders got through before, but he just couldn't defend that inside line. He's there again, is Penders. He's on the inside at turn 5. He's going to be on the outside for turn 6. Can he do the switchback? He can, but he drifts wide through the corner, and Hatton just about blocks it off. Towards turn 8 they go. Turn 7 is just a completely flat to the floor accelerator job. Penders trying the outside line. He's trying, but it's just not going to work out for him there. He's doing absolutely everything he can to hang on to this as Dan Hatton. It's been beautiful in terms of defensive work, but they've still got a few corners to go. They're going to go down this straight. I want to just cut forward briefly to our race winner, who's going to come around the final corner. It's been a brilliant drive from Packham. He's just about going to fend off Jordan Harden. It's a race win for Stuart Packham here at Misano. A great result for Jordan to end his season 12. This man's going to get a podium for the first time since season 10. Take a bow, Steve Hall. He gets on the podium. Danny Zattenbayer will be 4th. And this scrapping train as Penders kicks up as much grass as he can. He's trying to find a way through, and it was always going to end like that. But thankfully, that's a bit of a mess. Thankfully for the pair of them, they both have plenty of time to Ben Spiro, who's just gone off the road, actually. So Penders graciously lets Hatton back into 5th place. What a way to culminate that fight. Penders in 6th. Ben Spiro, who actually ended up a few seconds clear of Davy Zattenbayer. He's going to get 7th place in the end to continue on his run of great form. So the Hungarian gets 7th. Davy ends up in 8th position. Not sure what happened to Davey. He was 8 seconds away. I know that Bence went off the road, but something happened there. Mark Chapman will score some valuable points for 9th place. We'll have to find out what happened to him during the course of the race, as Matt Phillips comes across the line for a solid 14th, but it doesn't actually show how good his performance was this evening. Were it not for the drive-through, you're looking at a top 10 result for the Canadian. Jeffrey Van Buren, the last driver in the top 10. What could have been really is the big question for him tonight, but still a finish in the top 10, a strong recovery drive. And then Danny Felix, he doesn't have to worry about fighting Jacob Byford-Rue this time around, this year, because he's going to have the whole of the final corner to himself, and he'll be the last driver to cross the line on the lead lap in 11th place. But let's look through those provisional race results. It's Stuart Packham taking the win by less than a second from Jordan Harding in the end. Steve Hall rounds out the rostrum for his first podium since season 10. it is, of course, tradition for my microphone to go off at any time when it's convenient. Thank you very much for that. So, as I was saying, Steve Hall in third place. Danny's out and by with a good drive tonight in fourth position. Dan Hatton with the British Ministry of Defensive drive in fifth from Dennis Penders, who gave it his all but just couldn't get through in the end in sixth position. Bent Biro, seventh, great drive ahead of Davies out and by, who did another good solid drive through the field again. Mark Chapman and Jeffrey Van Buren round out the top 10. Danny Felix was 11th, a good performance from him. Ross Harris was 12th, with Jacob Byford-Rue. A really good drive from Jacob, but seemingly his Audi was all over the shop in the final few laps. But still, 13th place is a really strong drive. Matt Phillips in 14th position. Simon Whiting, what could have been for him had it not been for his mistake earlier on in the race. Mikey Keating in 16th. He's done well, Mikey, there, considering he flew off the road more times than a Spitfire taken off at launch. Joe Warner was 17th with Liam Watkinson in 18th place. We lost Mark Laszlo from the race, unfortunately. Can I make a point as well about Mark Laszlo? He was actually racing on a controller this evening because he's staying at a hotel. I think he did well, actually, to keep out of big dramas. But sadly had to retire from the race in the end. We lost Gas Monkey following on from his incident earlier on in the race. And sadly, Jamie Lee didn't serve his drive-through penalty, so got disqualified. Actually, when he went to serve his drive-through penalty, he sped in the pit lane, so he got disqualified as a result of a penalty on top of a penalty. So, shame for Jamie, but he was in 21st position. Couple of comments. No, don't tell me I've gone through everything and the mic's gone again. This is just becoming more and more of a pain now. No, it hasn't. It's just me. It's okay. That's a relief, really. But yeah, a couple of comments in the chat there. Danzo saying that'll have to do. I think it was a good drive from you, Danny. I think you did a really good job there. Thank you, Jacob. Really appreciate that, bud. It's okay that you do get a couple of mistakes. And yeah, I thought it was Jacob. I did say that maybe your tyre pressures were out of whack after the pit stop, and that does seem to be the case. But of course, next week we are off to Silverstone for the 2-hour race there on the 22nd of April. After that, we'll be into the season break, and then the championship will resume in May for its final attack on the run towards the championship. We will wait and see how on earth everybody does. Howard Dunn will be back next week as well, just to make you all aware. He's been out for a few races, but he's back. And Mark Laszlo was also having some issues with connections. That's why he ended up disconnecting. But in any case, driver mentions aside at the end of the race there, thank you very much for watching tonight. It's been a pleasure as always to commentate on the championship. Do give a follow on Twitch if you can. If you also watch on YouTube, if you could subscribe as well, that would be greatly appreciated to help boost the channel views as much as possible. I want to get as many people watching these brilliant races where possible. But from me, Jack Millington, that's everything for season 12's round number 9 here at Misano. And maybe it might be in the big wide world. Thank you very much for watching. Maybe it might be. Have a beautiful, wonderful rest of your evening.